Hello, my name is Elise, or Caffeine and Misery, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the decks that got some brand new support out of DZ-BT-14 on the way to the Crimson Moon, that being the Zero Foundation Blangdmire Fantôme. This is the brand new form of Blangdmire that's a Counter Sanctuary, a Vanguard, that came out last set, and it got some crazy new support with DZ-14 continuing on making it in a pretty powerful deck. The deck works similarly to Blangdmire in that it utilizes the bind zone, but it kind of uses it a little differently. It still gains power based on the number, but it scales a little differently, and they bind face up now instead. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the deck profile, starting with the Omen of Exhalation, Cavity Militia, which is the counter version of the original starter and has the Fantôme race, like just about every card in this deck. And the Wings of Jubilation, Holoraptor, who, when rode upon by Fang of Fang, Vankin Fang, you can search your deck for up to one Crimson Moon card, put into soul, and shuffle the deck. Crimson Moons are the orders for all the Fantôme cards. It is canonically what's making the Fantômes be these nation swap color-shifted versions. Moving into the grade 2 of the ride line, Fang of Fang, Vankin Fang. When ordered upon by a grade 3 card with Blangdmire's name, for single Soul Blast, you get to select the top 3 cards of the deck, reveal them, pick one of the revealed cards, put it in hand, and then you're allowed to discard the other 2 cards. If you don't discard the other 2, you shuffle the deck and shuffle them back in. So great way to build up your drop zone, which is going to be important for how Blangdmire works. Along with that, it's an easy way to get that Crimson Moon in soul into drop, which is going to be very relevant. Because of course, the Zero Foundation Blangdmire Fantôme, who has 2 act abilities by default. The first being for a single counterblast and binding 4 cards from drop. It'll gain a continuous and an auto. The continuous is at the front row will gain 5k. Then if the bind zone has 10 or more cards, it'll gain another 5k. And if it has 13 or more cards, it'll gain another 5k, capping at plus 15. And when he attacks, you pick a face-up card in your bind zone and call it. That is a mandatory call. Along with that, as an act once per turn for 3 energy and binding 2 or more up to 4 Crimson Moons from hand, soul, or drop. And you'll do all the following effects based on the number of Crimson Moons in bind. At 2 or more, you get to pick up to 1 card from drop and call it. And at 4 or more, he'll gain a critical. And if you Persona Road, you heal a card. So he's got a lot of recycling and longevity, because he can call from bind and get a guy from drop twice. Going into the main deck, though, we are actually going to start by talking about Crimson Moonlight, the Crimson Moon, which can be played as long as you have Fantôme Vanguard, and it allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, pick one of them and reveal it, and do one of the following as long as, based on what it is. And if you don't reveal a card, you shuffle up and draw. If the revealed card is a unit with great artillery equal to your Vanguard, you get to call it. And if the revealed card is a Crimson Moon, you get to put it into hand. Along with that, this card it's got a couple of continuous. This card cannot be bound other than by the cost of your Fantôme skills. In the bind zone, it cannot be chosen or moved to other areas by any player's card abilities. And in the damage zone, it can be put into drop, and you put the top card of deck into the damage zone. So you can't just lose them to damage. It's really nice. Moving into the grade 3s now in the main deck. We've got Blangdmire Fantôme Persona Rides, and 2 copies of the Nebula Knight's Path to Reach for the Stars, which is a grade 3 normal order that can be played from drop. It'll bind itself, and then you'll get to check the top 7 cards of your deck, pick a unit card with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard, call it, and shuffle. Going to the grade 2 cards, we've, of course, it's Blangdmire, so we've got Zamug, the Knight of Inscription Zamug, who, when placed on rare, as long as the opponent's Vanguard is grade 2 or greater, you reveal a grade 3 Blangdmire in the right deck, and if you reveal or you are on one, for a single counterblast, you get to look at the top 2 cards of the deck. One goes to hand, and the either is bottom decked or put into soul. Along with that, when he attacks, as long as you have grade 3 or greater Blangdmire, he'll gain 5 until end of turn. Then if the opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and he was placed by the Vanguard's ability this turn during the battle phase, you can have him get 10 instead of 5, and if he gets 10, you can EB3 and give him a critical. Along with that, to go along with him and start going through the new cards of the deck, we've got 4 copies of Inexplicable Dragon, who gets all the following as long as you have a grade 3 Blangdmire Vanguard. First, on place, other than during the battle phase, for single counterblast, you can pick a grade 3 or less normal unit with a different name from him from the bind zone and call it. And if you do, you get to bind a unit from drop. And at the end of the turn, you retire the called unit. And on Rear and Guardian Circle, he gets plus 5k power and shield. And if the opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and you have another copy of him in bind, he gets another 5k power. So he's a 15 to 20k booster, 10k intercept, that lets you get another card out of your bind zone as a rear guard without reducing the count. And that means you can recycle your grade 1s very easily too, like your Sargons, which, spoiler, there's Sargons in here. There's orders on the deck. What a surprise. Continuing on through the deck, though, as I said, there's orders. So, of course, we're on 2 copies of T-Fault. I'm using the free run T-Faults because I have them. But when she's placed on rear, other than by a unit card's ability, as long as you've played in normal order, you can soul blast 1 to check the top 5 cards of your deck, and either call a unit with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard, or add a normal order to your hand. And when she attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, as long as you have 4 more units, she'll get an extra 10k power. And running our grade 2 cards, we've got Protection Twincast, which is the regardless piece for the deck. It's a blitz order that gives 10k to an attacked unit, and as an auto, when your unit's attacked and this card's in drop zone, you can remove it from the game to give the attacked unit 5k for each of its grades. Moving on to our grade 1s, as I had already said earlier, we are, of course, on 4 copies of Sargon, because when he boosts, as long as you have more rear guards than your opponent, or you played a normal order this turn, it'll get plus 5k until end of turn, and at the end of the battle, you can retire it to check the top 2 cards of the deck, put one of them into hand, and bomb deck the other. It's cycling, it's bigger boost, it builds up your drop zone. It's now recyclable off of an Inexplicable Dragon 2 really nicely. Just a crazy card for this deck, all in all. Moving on to the in-archetype stuff, though, we've got 3 copies of the Knight of Charity Veidrock, who, in the bind zone, when your rear guard is placed from the bind zone during the battle phase, as long as you have a Fantôme Vanguard and you don't have a copy of him already, you can bind a card with a different name from him from drop and call him to a back row rear guard circle. When he's placed on rear, other than during the battle phase, as long as you have a Fantôme Vanguard, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, pick up to 1 Blangdmire from amongst them, or Crimson Moon, add it to hand, then shuffle. And at the end of the battle, he boosts. As long as the bind zone has a Crimson Moon card and you haven't countercharged, you can retire him to countercharge 1. Insane resource advantage because he can dig for your personas or your moons. You're always going to be able to countercharge at least once a turn with him. So you can be a little more liberal with how you use your counterblasts and play a little bit more defensively. And he's always available to be a booster. All of that for the other brand new support, I'm on 3 copies of the brand new Ill-Omened Dragon, who, when placed on rear, you reveal a Blangdmire from Ride deck. And if you do, or you're on a Blangdmire Vanguard, you get to, and you have not placed a copy of him this turn, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, bind one of them face up, and shuffle the deck. So this lets you accelerate your bind count a little bit. One of my biggest issues with the deck before was that it took a little bit to start hitting the 10 and the 13. This lets you speed that up. It's only by 1 card a turn, but that 1 card a turn can really make the difference. Rounding out the grade 1s, of course, 4 Sentinels. Moving into the trigger lineup, we are on 8 critical triggers, along with 3 of the guard fronts. This deck doesn't use a lot of soul, so you don't need the soul fronts. The draws aren't bad because more hand advantage is always good with this deck, having more you can do. But because you're able to recycle so many of your cards, you don't need as much of it. 4 heal triggers. And my OT of choice for Blangdmire Fantôme is the Spiritual King of Aquatics, Eidos Faro, which, as an additional effect when drove check, you get to pick a card from drop out of the hand, and then you'll give a unit a critical trigger. Pretty much any of the OTs are good to use here. Volnite is actually pretty insane because the auto on Zamug is not a once per turn, so if you have the energy to spend on it, you genuinely can and try and force out all their guard or force the kill with a lot of extra criticals. Moving into some of the pros and cons of the deck, first off, this deck is very easy to pilot. It is very direct on what it wants to do. It wants you to get cards and drop so that you can and bind them all, and so you can rebuild stuff. Along with that, with Ill Omen's Dragon now and Path already, you have ways to accelerate the bind a little faster, because normally you're doing between 4 and 6 cards a turn, which is a lot, but because you're going to be ripping a card out with Blangdmire, it's actually closer to 3 to 5 a turn, which that means you aren't hitting. You can't guarantee the 13 by your grade 3 turn, or by your Persona Right turn, I mean. Which, that extra 5k, I feel like has actually come up a lot for me. But with Ill Omen's Dragon 2, that means you are hitting that 6th card for sure, or the 7th card sometimes, on your grade 3 turn onward, and you can start building up the bind zone earlier, because that means you can take out copies of Zamug, or an Expiable Dragon, or Veidrock, Saragon even, and set them up for your grade 3 turns. Along with that, because of how much the deck compresses with the Crimson Moons, the Path, T-Fault, Veidrock, Saragon, Zamug, Ill Omened, the only card in this deck that doesn't compress at all is an Expiable Dragon and Blangdmire himself. Every other unit card in the deck, and both of the normal orders, deck thins further and further. So you can pretty much get your deck to almost exclusively triggers incredibly fast. And because you bind, you have access to Amorta as a tech card to additionally recycle things like your triggers, your Sentinels. You could run a single copy, maybe 2 if you want to loop them, and be able to recycle a bunch of your cards so that you don't deck out. It's going to cost you 2 cards for that recycling, but that might be worth it sometimes. Going to the cons, though, this deck, you can liberally use the Counterblast because of Veidrock, but you are still reliant on always having at least 1 a turn to be able to use Blangdmire Fantôme's skill. If you don't have that first Counterblast during the main phase, everything kind of falls apart, because then you're just 3 attacks, your front row doesn't have any extra power. Along with that, the Phantom skill can only be used twice, so you really do need to save the second activation until you're sure you need it. The heal isn't as relevant, but that critical, the extra pressure from that really is. Now, this is kind of helped with the fact that an Expiable Dragon can recycle your Saragons, your Veidrocks, pretty much anything in the deck for a single Counterblast. So that kind of helps balance that issue. It gives you a bit more recycling, but it sometimes is not enough. But all in all, this is one of my favorite decks to come out of this section of Divines. I think it's really easy to pilot, so it's really good for just showing how the game flows. I think it's very fun, honestly. It's very direct in what it wants to do, but that is not a bad thing. And I think it has a good amount of power behind it. Overall, this is one of my favorite decks of this format. But I want to know what y'all think. Do all the YouTube stuff. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you have thoughts on the deck, if you like listening to me yap about the deck or just yap in general, please do all of it. And I will see y'all next time. Ciao.